Is it possible to beat Call of Duty, Vanguard, a game widely considered the worst in the entire series, using nothing but pistols? Or am I just setting myself up for a colossal waste of time? For this high-stakes mission, the world's elite soldiers have been assembled, but they barely know each other yet. We start by chasing down a moving train to kick off our infiltration plan. My loadout was simple: an assault rifle and a classic 6-shot revolver. I started off in high spirits, but I hit a snag immediately. The controls felt a bit clunky. I'll chalk that up to my own inexperience for now. My initial ammo count was just 3 reloads, which raised the obvious question: where do I find more? The game answered quickly. Sometimes soldiers carry extra, or you scavenge crates scattered across the map, hoping to find a few stray rounds at the bottom. It's not much, but I'm hoping it'll be enough. I stumbled into a carriage filled with a German weapons cache. It looked incredible, but I couldn't touch a thing. So much firepower, and I'm just staring at it, dreaming. But enough of that. The first mission wasn't too bad. I focused on learning to aim, holding my position, and being useful to the squad. The final task was to take out the driver, who seemed entirely unconcerned with his own safety. First objective complete. Moving on. We're in Hamburg now, and based on the team's intel, I'm finally starting to understand our goal. We're hunting for secret documents related to Project Phoenix. What's in them, or why we need them, isn't clear, but orders are orders. The train drops us at the station, and the real challenge begins. We have to fight our way through fortified German positions. That was tough enough, but then the dogs showed up. I don't know what the developers fed these dogs, but they are absolutely lethal. One bite, and it's game over. After 10 failed attempts, those dogs were starting to leave a permanent mark on my nervous system. We find the documents, some of which are being loaded onto U-boats. Curiosity got the better of us, and we decided to investigate. The team went over the top, leaving me behind. After clearing the lower level, I finally caught up. The ammo shortage was starting to get real. I cleared a path and reached for the documents, but before I could grab them, a gas grenade hit us. Within seconds, my character was captured. Almost the entire team was taken, only one managed to escape. Was it betrayal or strategy? Hard to say. After a brutal interrogation, the enemy commander made a choice that cost us a good man. The survivors were sent to Berlin, and during the transit, our squad leader began to reminisce. Suddenly, we're in his shoes. We start in a plane carrying reinforcements. Just as the tension peaks, the plane is hit. We're forced to jump, but my parachute catches fire. I'm in a free fall, forced to deploy my reserve at the last second before a freezing water landing. Swimming in those conditions at night is no picnic, but I clawed my way to shore. The first weapon I found was a rifle. I had to fire it. It was a forced story beat. I had no choice. Then came the real challenge. How do I survive without a pistol? I was determined to stick to the challenge, even if the game wasn't giving me any handguns. I had to sneak to a truck, which of course had ammo but zero weaponry. I took out the guards in hand-to-hand combat and slipped into the basement. And let me tell you, everything before this was child's play. As I left the basement, I was pinned by 2 enemies, one covering the door, the other watching his back. A frontal assault was impossible. I could take one, but not both. Just as I'd exhausted every strategy, fate threw me a bone. One of the soldiers wandered toward the door, and I seized the opportunity. It was a sign. The enemy's move, meaning there was still a chance to make it through without firing. I waited for the second one, but he wouldn't budge. I had to risk it. It paid off, and the area was clear. But the problems didn't stop there. I still hadn't found a pistol, and 10 more soldiers were waiting outside. I wasn't about to walk into that trap. Then the dogs returned. Honestly, I was ready to pull the trigger. If I died now, I'd lose everything since my save point was at the very beginning. Thankfully, the dogs got glitched in the doorway, and I dispatched them with melee attacks. Occasionally, guards would wander inside, and I'd deal with them, still without firing a single shot. After sitting in that room for 30 minutes, I decided to make a run for it, and got immediately annihilated. I was actually offended. But, as luck would have it, the game had saved my progress just outside. I've got to hand it to the devs for that checkpoint, though I certainly won't thank them for denying me a pistol in my loadout. After a few more tries, I finally managed to break free, and I honestly couldn't believe my eyes. I actually did it. I'd convinced myself it was impossible. For those wondering about the difficulty, I'm playing on the hardest setting, and let me tell you, pulling off these escapes is no walk in the park. I reached a nearby barn and finally found something useful: grenades. I cleared the room, and out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a pistol on the screen. Seriously? Right at the end of the mission? Still, I grabbed it just in case. I even tossed a grenade at my own team. I figured there couldn't be any friendlies in there, right? We had a nice chat with the squad, and suddenly, my character is promoted to squad leader. That's a hell of a career trajectory. We pushed forward, where I suffered through some infuriatingly scripted enemy spawns that just jump you out of nowhere. We fought our way to a bridge where a machine gunner gave me a hard time, but he didn't last long once I pelted him with grenades. We finally reached our lines, got a ride to a makeshift base, and were briefed on our next objective: clearing the trenches. It wasn't going to be easy. My character seemed to hand over his only pistol at that moment, and I wanted to scream at the screen, "What a fool!" But my temper cooled when I realized it was a flare gun. I hopped into a truck, showing those barricades exactly why our plan wasn't just some madman's fantasy. We started a massive trench firefight, and just imagine my frustration. I kept finding crates absolutely stuffed with ammo. It made me wonder, why am I struggling for supplies the rest of the game if you're just going to spawn infinite ammo here? Logic and common sense clearly took the day off. The main objective was to destroy the artillery so our allies could land on the beach. I finished the task quickly and fired the signal flare, which kicked off a massive offensive. Meanwhile, the squad was captured in Berlin and thrown into cells. The room was surprisingly spacious. They interrogated the squad leader first, but when they didn't get anything useful out of him, they went for Polina, a Russian sniper with an incredibly compelling backstory. During the war, she dreamed of being a sniper, but she was relegated to a field medic role. She wasn't happy about it, but there was nothing she could do. We shared tea and pies with her father and brother, listening to some captivating stories. But her brother forgot the bottles they needed to make Molotov cocktails. On the way, we passed a neighbor struggling to shove his sofa upstairs. I actually stopped to see if he'd ever make it, but no luck. The atmosphere of the city felt quite soulful, though I wouldn't call it historically accurate. I delivered the bottles, and then came the task of infiltrating a building where I wasn't exactly welcome. The protagonist's parkour skills helped immensely. It was so impressive that I could never hope to replicate it, jumping off walls, grabbing onto slick surfaces, and hauling her entire body up like she weighed nothing. That's the kind of thing you only see in movies or games. Eventually, I reached the spot, but things took a turn for the worse. The city's bombing began, and it was back to playing parkour sim, dodging gunfire. Fate could have easily ended her life there, but we caught a break. A shell failed to detonate. I made it home and had to put my knife to work. Looking out the window, I saw her father and several neighbors being led outside, and the worst-case scenario unfolded. They were executed. We tried to intervene, but the script wouldn't let us. We fought our way to the exit and managed to say goodbye to her father, taking his sniper rifle. I hope I won't need it, but it's heartbreaking to see these people suffer, not just because of the game's story, but because of the reality so many had to endure. By this point, I'd finally gotten a feel for the controls, and the game was actually becoming fun. I had to rescue the remaining survivors, but first, I had to clear a massive haul of enemies. We saved her brother, and you have to admire this woman's power. She's jumping off walls like a mountain goat. Honestly, I look like an amateur next to her. All right, enough self-deprecation. I had to help the others get out from the roof, where plenty of enemies were waiting. I tossed Molotovs at them like they were candy. Strangely, they never seemed to run out. I cleared the rest with my pistol. We made it to the secret passage just in time, saving our skins. That day, the city was practically wiped off the face of the earth. That's the tragic story of Polina, but even she didn't spill the secrets they were so desperate to hear. And here is where the plot takes an interesting turn. That teammate who escaped at the beginning, the one everyone assumed was dead, was captured, and his interrogation begins. Let's see just how compelling his story is. It starts far out in the ocean. He and his wingman are prepping for a flight. The mission is strictly aerial, so I won't be able to use my pistol here, but I'll treat this as a necessary exception to the rules. At first, you're dogfighting enemy planes, and then you have to dive in to deliver a gift straight to an enemy ship. I have to be honest, the controls here are absolutely atrocious. I crashed about 10 times during this mission. It was a miserable experience. Either I was taking them down, or they were taking me down. Romantic, right? I really didn't enjoy this mission. It was one of the most frustrating parts of the game. After that little fairy tale, the hero is brought back to his cell, where one of the squad members is executed. Apparently, the writers didn't want to come up with another backstory for him. I'm sure everyone watching probably saw that coming, but there's no time to grieve. We're told that Germany has lost Hitler, and it turns out their whole plan was to preserve the command structure and escape. Then, the game decides to put us back in the pilot seat. Only this time, I'm not actually flying, I'm being hunted. The hero is forced to take a risk and drop to a dangerously low altitude to shake his pursuers, but he ends up crashing anyway. My comrade covers the wounded hero with leaves and heads off for reconnaissance. Soon, the enemy arrives at the crash site, and I spend a few hundred meters crawling through the bushes like a turtle. Again, I wasn't given a pistol, so I had no way to fight back. I eventually found a flare gun, fired it, and linked back up with my buddy, only for us both to be taken prisoner again. It didn't last long, though. Our allies showed up and bailed us out. And most importantly, I finally got my hands on a pistol. We do a lot of shooting from there, eventually pushing toward minefields and fortified bunkers. The game forced me to use a flamethrower to clear out the enemies inside, which I really didn't want to do, so I tried to carefully lure the soldiers out one by one. After plenty of failed attempts, I finally managed to sneak inside and swap the flamethrower for a new pistol. We destroyed the artillery, took down waves of enemies, and found a plane, which, as I mentioned, our hero happens to know how to fly. While they were pushing the plane to the runway, the game gave me a machine gun. I didn't take out a single enemy with it. I just did a lot of active pretending to shoot, so the game script wouldn't flag me. It worked perfectly. Thanks to our help, the final and largest bunker was destroyed, allowing Allied forces to gain the upper hand and win. Meanwhile, during the interrogation, it turns out Polina still has her knife. I guess they didn't bother searching them before throwing them in the cell. The game is just getting more interesting. I want to say, sorry if I'm not focusing too heavily on every single narrative beat. It doesn't really have much to do with my challenge, and I don't want to spoil the entire storyline for you, but if I see enough support in the comments, I'd be happy to dive deeper into the lore in the future. Thanks in advance. Now, for Polina's second interrogation. Will she actually use that knife to break free? They call her Lady Nightingale, and now we're about to find out how she earned such a brutal nickname. A man named Leo Steiner is cruising through the streets of Stalingrad, and Polina's blood is boiling. She wants revenge for her father and everyone else he's destroyed. She and her brother set out to hunt him down. We spot an enemy sniper early on, so I'm moving carefully, but I immediately run into a problem that's about to turn into a complete nightmare: the lack of a pistol. I thought I'd find one along the way, but I was dead wrong. We spot enemy patrols, and my brother gets so reckless, he might as well be trying to catch every bullet in the city. We're moving cautiously for a reason. The snipers won't let us pass. This is where the game shows me why Polina has that knife. She can have her brother use it to create a glint, distracting the snipers as if they're stupid enough to fall for it every time. It's a cool mechanic, and in a way, it's realistic, but you'd think they'd be smarter than that. But hey, it's a game. We move on, and I have to put down a couple of dogs. Keep in mind, I still can't fire my gun, so I tried tossing grenades and waiting for the enemies to come to me. I used smoke grenades to sneak past, but I couldn't believe I wasn't finding a way around the combat encounters. No pistols, no grenades left, and then the Jaeger mortar enters the battlefield. It was already difficult, but now, passing this looks impossible. Believe me, I suffered through this mission worse than any other. My only solution was to take this guy down. The problem? He's scripted to track only me relentlessly. I tried everything. I tried leaving him to my brother, hoping he'd handle it, but I'd step away for 10 minutes, come back, and nothing would have changed. It felt like my brother wasn't doing anything at all. He dealt almost no damage and barely used the sniper distraction ability. In a word, I was totally screwed. I tried meleeing him with the butt of my rifle, but the mechanics are awful. If I get too close, he releases gas that makes Polina lose control. I tried that 10 times, waiting for his reload animation, but nothing worked. After 50 attempts, I was losing hope. I restarted the mission and tried spamming him with grenades, hoping for a miracle. I found the perfect cover, but he just soaked up the damage like it was nothing. Once I realized I couldn't kill him, I tried one last idea. I'd wait for his reload, throw something to disorient him, and sprint for the exit. I even dropped the difficulty just so I wouldn't die instantly. But guess what? His script forces him to fire even without reloading the second I get near the exit. I was out of options. Friends, I suffered through this for over 2 hours, but I just couldn't find a way through without breaking the rules. I hit the forums and watched how others handled this stage, and nobody has been able to bypass him. It became clear he's a boss, and the game forces you to take him down. After that, the rest of my attempts involved going loud. Mind you, besides that boss, I had 3 snipers and over 10 soldiers breathing down my neck. Surviving felt impossible, but despite the Jaeger mortar's heavy armor, I eventually brought him down. It was a bittersweet feeling. I'd finally moved forward, but I had to break my own rules to do it. Still, I don't regret it. The game simply didn't give me any other options. We finally catch sight of our target, but we're spotted, and my brother gets seriously wounded. I help him up, and look at that. The game finally gives me the pistol I needed a minute ago. Classic. I cleared out the remaining soldiers, but 2 of them had rocket launchers. We took a nasty fall, and I had to say goodbye to my brother, another truly gut-wrenching scene. As a final act, he pulled out grenades that nearly took Polina out with him. I managed to escape with seconds to spare. I made my way into a ruined building, trying to clear it as quietly as possible. And of course, a pistol conveniently appears on the screen just as I'm passing by. I'll take what I can get. My next target was a sniper. We played a game of cat and mouse, running in circles until I finally managed to take him out. That left only Leo Steiner. Fighting him was actually fun. We stalked him with a knife, trying to land a strike from behind. After the 3rd round, he was so badly wounded, he scrambled to the roof where, after a brief, tense conversation, the protagonist finished him off. It boosted the morale of our allies, and the city was finally liberated. The story is intriguing, but the pacing is relentless. It barely gives you a moment to breathe. I did my best not to get lost in the shuffle. While we were listening to that story, the squad came up with a new plan. One of them, seemingly ready to spill the beans, heads into an interrogation, where I'm forced back into another flashback. Here, my mission was to stop a supply convoy and clear out the enemies. At the very end, my partner took a bullet, saving my life. Afterward, we pushed to the enemy base to grab the secret documents. We moved on to a second base to plant dynamite and blow their ammo reserves sky high. Then, I somehow managed to shoot down an enemy plane with a pistol, which, believe it or not, we actually pulled off. A bit later, we launched a full-scale assault. I cleared out every mortar position to give our guys some breathing room. Then, we had to deal with the enemy aircraft picking off our planes. The firefight was intense, and eventually, I ran completely dry on ammo, hoping my partner would clean up the rest. I was forced to pick up a rocket launcher to take out a tank, which triggered an airstrike that wiped out the resistance. I couldn't record that part because the game crashed. What a lovely parting gift from Vanguard. After the story concluded, the hero pulled out that legendary knife, dealt with the guards, and dragged our captor back to the group. Tensions in Berlin were reaching a breaking point while the command staff was busy celebrating their escape. Our captor's fate was brutal, but arguably deserved. We finally broke free, well, as free as you can be, and made our escape through a gap in the wall. I fought my way through waves of enemies, clearing snipers and tanks for each member of our squad. We reached the hangar, I took down yet another Jaeger mortar, and it was time to kick down the doors. The main villain was making a break for his car, and I had to stop him. I managed to intercept him just as he was boarding his plane. We had a little chat, and while we initially considered letting him go, we changed our minds. We commandeered his plane, which carried all the secret documents. Mission accomplished. And that, friends, was my challenge. I had to pull the trigger and use more than just pistols at times, but I had no choice. Vanguard is a very specific kind of game. It's clear why it isn't considered the best in the series, but playing through it was still an interesting experience. If you enjoyed the video, I'd be incredibly grateful for your support. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.